Teachers of Reddit. What is the most disrespectful thing a student has done or said? When I was student teaching, a senior thought it would be funny to go rip the wig off of a teacher who was going through chemo at the time. What happened to that student? I really hope he got suspended or even expelled. That's beyond disrespectful. In fact, that's just fucking heartless. He actually got punched in the face by another teacher. Said other teacher was standing right there, and if I recall correctly, he did it out of reflex. Surprisingly, the teacher did not get in trouble. Glad the teacher who punched ain't in trouble. He is the one who knocks students out cold. When I was in high school, there was this kid who was the class clown, but in a bad way. He was the jokester of the class, but he was also a bully, never did any work, and distracted everyone. He was also very bright. My science teacher tried so hard to get through to him. He'd tell him he believed in him, knew he had it in him to do well, but it never worked. The kid just laughed in his face every time he tried to help. At the end of high school, he'd flunked his exams so many times he wasn't even allowed to take it again unless he paid for it. My science teacher still believed in him, and said he knew he could pass it if he just tried one more time, and he even offered to pay. The kid accepted, said he was disappointed in himself. He needed to pass to get into college and his mother would never afford it. He said he'd study this time and sit the test. Teacher paid. The kid didn't even show up for it, and afterwards I saw him laughing about how stupid the teacher was for giving him another chance. I would say the joke's on him. Pretty sure he's a loser and that teacher has learned a painful lesson but is still trying. That kid is gonna grow up and feel really bad. Hell, maybe he's reading this. Reading? You have a bit too high expectations for him, I see. There was a fist fight in the cafeteria, and after the principal broke it up, the kid he was restraining screamed, "I'm glad your bitch wife died on 9/11. Principal turned red and walked out. Student was expelled. Wow, that is low. When I was in middle school, we had the guest speaker John Halligan speak about bullying cause his son, Ryan, killed himself years prior to bullying. During question time, a student raised his hand, and in an auditorium, with a microphone right at his face, standing up, he asked, "What did you feel worse about, your son's death or 9/11?" Edit. Just learned from a fellow classmate. He was autistic. Makes sense now. Not a teacher, but when I was in high school I had this little Asian lady as a teacher. She used to give out candy for doing well in class. She also kept all her stuff on a little cart that she rolled from class to class. One day one of the jocks decides to steal the cart and the teacher was helpless as he was easy double her size. She cried. You know he did a bad thing when his jock buddies didn't even think it was funny. Love it when pricks get their egos slashed. I taught elementary school at a school for abused, neglected, and delinquent children the last 2 summers. It's special act, so it's serious business. One of my first grades only referred to me as this bitch. Another student I had, 5th grade, wrote about a half a page of ways he was going to rape me. Older students would frequently hit teachers and staff, and cursing out was a common occurrence. One social worker was pushed down a flight of stairs and had bleach poured on her face. A pregnant teacher had a desk thrown at her, but that's more common than you'd think. Always fun at that school. Wow, that is insane. I give you so much credit for working there. How do you even handle situations like that? This bitch is just one of the things you have to let go. The rape stuff I reported, and then the social workers step in to handle it. Nothing with me. As for the bleach incident, there was legal action against the student. In most cases, you write an incident report, official documentation, and then you give it to the powers that be. Then you go home and drink. Put his feet up on the trash can as I walked in front of him, purposefully tripping me in front of the whole class and breaking my nose. Administration refused to punish him, but I threw him out of my class and refused to allow him back since wouldn't apologize. Later that year, I was speaking to a very upset student in the hall during classes and he was walking the halls. He had some sort of tiny but heavy metal bearings that he threw at us, hitting me and the girl in the head. He ran. Administration refused to chase him down or punish him again. Karma got him though. He made a derogatory comment one day about people with HIV. It was overheard by a student whose mother had HIV. He left school that day in an ambulance. I was almost done reading when I saw the words HIV and karma. I was very prepared to hear about you saying that you are glad one of your former students had HIV. Oh boy. Not a teacher but a student who witnessed this whole fiasco, and it still greatly bothers me even now. So about 8 years ago in high school I had this science teacher who just transferred from another school. Let's call him Mr. K. He was in a motorized wheelchair because he was paralyzed from the waist down, and he was a pretty boring teacher. But he wasn't mean. I don't know what it was. His personality, his disability, both IDK. But this guy was the target of some of the most disrespectful and hurtful bullying performed by students, teachers, and even his own Tay. My classmates would openly crack jokes about his disability and loudly talk about it like how do you have sex like that, followed by a bunch of nasty remarks of how he might have it, etc. His Tay was absolutely rude about him too behind his back. She would also make jokes about him with the students when he wasn't in the room or out of earshot, etc. She'd plaster on this fake smile whenever he was around though. I mean, she hid it, but you'd expect more from an adult, you know. And then some asshole stuck a menstrual pad on the back of his wheelchair. Everyone laughed about it and no one told him. Even the teachers. At least, not until he went into the teacher's lounge. But the ones walking around that day, I've heard, laughed along with the students. I wasn't in that section during the time it happened, otherwise I would have told him. My high school is weird, so some of my classes were on the other side of the school entirely. A lot of the teachers would brush off the bullying Mr. K received or would barely scold kids for it. And like earlier, they would join in. Some would be too scared to even talk about it at all or just chuckle and change the subject. It was mortifying. It was cruel. And I still feel like an utter asshole for not standing up for Mr. K because he didn't deserve that at all. I mean, I wasn't a problematic student, and he liked me because of that, but I didn't do anything to help him either. I changed to online schooling after that year, but I heard from my friends that still went there that he had left that school after that year. Literally only stayed there for 1 year and received some of the worst bullying ever, by everyone. I can't imagine this poor guy's life, and I wonder if that's the reason why he left his previous school. I hope he's doing okay now. Not a teacher, but once a friend of mine got in a pretty heated argument about something stupid with the teacher in our world history class, and eventually he just got up, walked over to the front of the classroom, and necked the teacher, slapped the back of their neck as hard as he possibly could. He got suspended. When you said necked, I imagined aggressively making out with until I continued reading. I was a senior and was placed in a freshman computer class for some reason. Those freshmen didn't even care what the teacher had to say or anything he was trying to teach. Literally the whole class every day would just talk to each other or play games on the computer. One day the teacher broke down and started crying, saying no one respected the teacher, and then quit. Few years later I heard the teacher had passed away. I was the only one in the class that paid attention to what was being said and showed. The teacher clearly just loved teaching and wanted to teach, but no one gave a fuck. I absolutely hated it when this would happen in school. I had a computer programming teacher who would do his best to teach the class every day, but there were so many students who just goofed off and played games. I think I know of 2 or 3 other students out of the entire class that actually gave a shit and wrote their programs. Everyone else just blatantly plagiarized from the internet. I think the teacher just gave them passing grades because it was such a rampant problem that if he cracked down on it everyone would fail and there would be a riot. It makes me sick to think that students go for classes like that because they think they can get an easy A while goofing off. Totally disrespectful and a waste of everyone's time and energy.